Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Put On Your Imagination Hat. This is Jude Valentine, Coordinator of Studio and Public Programming at the Farnsworth Art Museum. And today we're thinking spring and flowers. So I thought we'd take a look at this watercolor by Georgia O'Keeffe for inspiration. It's in our collection, and I'm going to share my screen here so you can take a look at it too. This watercolor by Georgia O'Keeffe exemplifies her careful observation of the natural world, the boldness of her compositions, and her unparalleled mastery of the watercolor medium. This work was included in exhibitions at Alfred Stieglitz's The American Place Gallery, one of the country's most important galleries devoted to the work of the American avant-garde in the turn of the 20th century. O'Keeffe soon became one of the country's foremost American modernists and one of the best-known American artists in the world. Stieglitz himself, an accomplished photographer, first saw her work in 1916 and started to organize a show of her work without ever meeting her. He became her dealer and soon her husband, establishing a close and frequently troubled relationship that continued until his death in 1946. O'Keeffe painted in Maine, traveling to Ogunquit and the surrounding area in 1929, and frequently she brought back shells she found here to use as subjects of her paintings done elsewhere. So the text I just read was featured in Maine and American Art, the Farnsworth Art Museum catalog, which was published in 2020 with thanks to the Henry Luce Foundation and the Wyeth Foundation for American Art. So let's just take a look at this painting briefly. I wanted to point out, if you can see my cursor here, my little arrow, some of the areas of the painting that create a lot of visual interest. And specifically in these greenish areas where the brush has been dragged out and without a lot of paint in it. It's called dry brush. It's a technique that is really great for textures. And here O'Keeffe has used it to create kind of a sense of like a brushy, needly kind of pineish leaves, boughs, pieces of her bouquet. And it also forms, this dark green also forms a really nice contrast to the edges of her white flowers, which could be like a soapwort or a field flower of some kind. So I'm going to switch my camera to the studio desktop, and we can get started on showing you how to do this with some flowers of spring here, which I've got on the desk. So here we are. We've got our pansies, which are so cheerful at this early spring time of year. And I've taken a little bit of liberty to get a head start on things. So what I've done is, this is a cardstock. So first of all, I should tell you what you'll need. So you'll need a piece of cardstock. It doesn't have to be pre-scored, but and it could just be, you know, the size of a postcard. It doesn't have to be a card at all. But the idea is that it's a little heavier paper. So it's a card paper, and it doesn't have to be watercolor paper. This is not watercolor paper. And I've put it down, I've taped it down actually, because this is painter's tape. I don't want the watercolor to go over this edge, because I do want to put it into an envelope and have it be kind of a nice crisp edge along the fold. So I'm just putting a piece of tape here to stop the watercolor from traveling. So I'm going to reposition it again. And you can also, you know, if you want to make the whole thing a watercolor, so you'd have a watercolor front and back on your card, you can just tape it on the edges too to keep it from moving. So I might do that on one side. where I know I'm not going to be watercoloring, and I can do it over here, or I can just leave this. I can just leave this alone now, these edges, because it's not going to travel being taped down at 4 places. Okay, so then I used my indelible pen to create some shapes, but you can also use a pencil. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having pencil marks or pen marks on your paper, not at all. So let me grab a pencil here, and well, I don't have a pencil, so I will use another pen to just show you. But just starting out, I mean, you may want to just make some big daisy shapes, and you don't have to sketch the whole thing out. You might just sketch out bits and pieces of it, just to give yourself an idea of where things are going to go. And they can go off the paper. It's totally okay. So I just want you to play and have some fun with this. And if we did the back on this one, we can also, do some kind of dahlia style flowers. And we can also just sketch. These are really just great to sketch. They're very simple, like a little top, and then there's a middle and a bottom. So there's a pansy. So anyway, have some fun just sketching out some basic flower shapes. You don't have to get very exact or very detailed about it. Just enough to give you a sense of where things are going and where things are. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use like a biggish type of brush, but you can also use a sponge. So I mean, you can use whatever you have. It doesn't have to be a watercolor brush. So this is a little piece of a kitchen sponge, and I'm just going to go in and wet the areas around my flower shapes, and my sponge is falling apart, and it's totally okay. You can always kind of get rid of it later. Kind of. All right. And then I'm only using a couple of colors. I'm going to mix up. I'm going to take this green, which is an emerald green. It could be a viridian. And I'm going to put it on my plate and just do a little bit of, just kind of thin it out a little bit. And then I'm going to come right up to the edge of my flower here. And I'm going to just, and you might have to practice a little bit of this, which is totally fine. I mean, practice is helpful. If you get it too wet, like I've got it a little too wet here, you won't be able to drag it out as far. So what you can do is just wipe it a bit on your sponge, and then just go back in and kind of drag it. Now that's even too wet. Go back in and drag it out just a little bit. And what happens is, because you've pre-wet the paper, it will start to bleed a little bit, so it'll get nice and it'll get fuzzy. And you can really just have a really light touch on this too. There we go. This is starting to work. You can do it with a smaller brush. And over here, this is where it's really helpful to have this tape. And just go in and kind of pull it out. Okay. There we go. Now, if you want to get a little more depth in your color, you can add some add some blue to your green. And this is going to give you a really nice kind of a deeper blue-green. And you can come right in kind of close to the edge and just kind of layer it in. Again, you can wipe off your brush a little bit. Pull things out. And maybe where it's a little close, like in here. You don't have to make it, you know, doesn't have to have that dry brush. I'm coming down here. Coming over here. So you get the idea. What I love about these big brushes is you can also use them as a line. So you can kind of come in sideways with it and make a nice crisp line. And come down. So there you go. There's some flower shapes. And then we're going to fill in the flowers. I'm going to go for some edges of the flowers themselves. So we'll just make this a little more darker over here. And that was already there. I don't know how that happened. It was a happy accident from some other, just in this cardstock was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And anyway, all right. So there's our background. And then I'm going to come in with a nice purple and maybe another brush. Let's see, I do have a purple here. Here we go. And I'm going to leave a space in the middle for some of the white and some of the yellow of the and we can pull in a little more water, can make it really kind of watercolory. You can leave a little bit around the edge too, to kind of show where the flowers kind of meet up with each other. And then you can really pale it out as well with a lot of water in your brush. Kind of give a sense of an edge. So the contrast is really important to kind of edge things between the dark and the light to make an edge. All right, there we go. It's starting to look a little better. And then how about this one up here? This is kind of a sideways one. So what you can do is, once this dries a little bit, you can go back in. You can go back in with some yellow now to create the centers. Play around. I'll wash my brush out a little bit. Maybe I'm gonna switch up my brush. So I've got a little more of a smaller brush. And then just kind of adding some centery things, centers to our center over there. And maybe coming back in and putting a little more, maybe taking some of that yellow, mixing it with the green, and coming in and putting some more leaf shapes. Some leaf shapes right behind here. So you're just building up some layers behind your edge, and then there you get a nice, you can just get a really nice crisp by working behind the flower. You can just get a really nice crisp edge. And adding in another green, so making maybe some leaf shapes behind it. Some stems. There you go. So just have some fun with this. And you can come back in also and put in some details with your brush. Now here's where I could really make some here. Just feather that out a little bit. Especially towards this side, so that'll make it a little more. There, fill that in a little bit. Okay, so there's a quick tutorial on, maybe come down here a little bit, add some deeper color in through here. There we go. So have some fun with this and just play around and look at that work by Georgia O'Keeffe for more inspiration, and send us your images. Would love to see what you're up to. So that's all for now, and we'll see you next time with another Imagination Hat activity. So have fun. Bye for now.